Uh, Congressional investigators, Stephanie, say that the White House call records that they now have from the National Archives do not have calls made to or from Trump during the attack on the Capitol. Can you illuminate his calling practices for us and why they may not be part of the record?
So, he was on the phone all the time, whether we were in the Oval Office or we were in the dining room, in the middle of something, he would yell out, get somebody on the phone, get somebody on the phone, or he would take phone calls in the middle of meetings all the time. So I do find that those gaps are kind of odd. However, from all the reports that are out there, there were people frantically calling, asking for help and asking for him to do something. So I don't know this for a fact, but knowing him the way that I do, I imagine people were coming in and saying, so and so is on the phone. They want you to call it off. And he didn't want to. So if he didn't want to hear a message that somebody was saying, I'm sure he just didn't take the call. He also would use staffers' phones sometimes. So that could be something that was happening. Somebody that was in the room with him could have handed him a phone if somebody was calling in that regard. I do think it's very odd. And I hope that they can look into it and maybe piece some things together, perhaps by getting other people's cell phone records.
Whose phones would he use? How would that work?
Again, anybody in the room, I'll just use Dan Scavino as an example because he was always, always in the room. But let's say Jared or Ivanka would have been in the room, and let's say, McCarthy would have been calling. Perhaps then Ivanka would hand the phone over and say, here you go. Or perhaps the president would have said no. He did this all the time if he just didn't want to hear what somebody had to say. So in those moments, maybe he just didn't want to hear all these pleas for help because he was enjoying that people were fighting for him.
I will note you listed Dan Scavino and Ivanka. There are a couple people who are not cooperating, really,
Exactly.
with the January 6th committee now. So that's notable.
Yes. And if you have nothing to hide, I don't understand why you don't just, turn things over, say what happened and move on with things.
Jamie, talk to us about, I'm wondering if this means anything, if it means they were using personal devices, this gap in phone call records, in call records of the then president during the riot.
So
What's the
here's
explanation here?
here's our reporting. What do we know about Donald Trump, Don? He loves to talk on the phone. He was up in the residence every night, normally talking to people all night long on the phone. What is notable here is, as you said, there is a 3-hour-plus gap where there do not seem to be any recorded phone calls from the official record. I'm not talking about someone calling him and not getting him. I'm talking about the kind of phone call where two people were talking to each other. So we know there are phone calls during this time. We know that he had a shouting match with Kevin McCarthy during the riot. We know that he reached out and reached Senator Mike Lee on his phone. So why don't the White House official records reflect this? Two possibilities. One you just said. He was using a personal cell phone, which has been a huge problem since day one. Or he was using personal cell phones of aides, which he did a lot. Dan Scavino or his body man, Nick Luna. That was very typical behavior. I just want to repeat what John Dean just said about rules. What all of this says is he wasn't following the rules. A former Trump White House official said to me this week, he didn't think the rules applied to him, and that trickled down to everyone around him.
Yeah. And also, there's another possibility that we have to add in there, Jamie. They could find more records. They could,
absolutely.
Right,
there may be more records coming. Or let me add one other possibility. We have had a lot of reporting that he was transfixed, watching the riot on TV, rewinding the button.
That nobody could get to him. He didn't talk to anybody.
Correct. And we know that, for example, Chris Christie tried 4 different ways to reach him and couldn't get through, was told he wasn't available. So maybe he was just watching TV.
Gotcha. John, how does this compare to the missing 18.5-minute gap on the Nixon Watergate tapes? Is that a fair comparison, or it doesn't compare?
It's a tough comparison. First of all, we don't have all the facts on why this information is missing. That is largely a manually constructed log and the president's daily diary. Whilst a lot of it today is automated, there's still an archive staffer who's there assembling that document. So the 18.5-minute gap was just a mistake at the end of the process of producing tapes they said they would produce. The president had just fired the special prosecutor and then relented and started turning over tapes, and oops, 2 of them are missing. One's got an 18.5-minute gap. The other one happens to be the conversation I said I thought I was recorded on, and they disappear. So they made a big story, but we've never found out the guilty party or who did it.
Jamie, I want to ask you, since you were talking about the phone and him using,
Right.
other people, could the committee end up subpoenaing Donald Trump's personal phone records?
It's a really interesting question. It's been apparent, I really think for political reasons, going after a former president, that they have been reticent to do it. But the chairman of the committee, Benny Thompson, has not ruled it out. And I think there's a high bar. But if they think there is something incriminating a smoking gun, I would not rule out that they would look at that.